So this might be the crowd that we have today on this. Let's see, it's Thursday, I guess. I'm actually, I'm not where I'm usually at, which is in Europe. I'm in Mexico these days. So I'm not sure that, I guess it's probably around 8, 9, 10-ish around Europe. I guess at this point, it's an afternoon for me here.
And where in Mexico?
We're in Cancun. We actually have a company offsite here. So this whole week we've been we're just meeting and planning for the next 6 months. A lot of the stuff that needs to get done. So nice being a fully remote team and then get together now and then and meet everyone in person. The biggest surprise is always the people who you only meet online, and then when you meet them in person, you figure out, the height, because you don't know when you see people online how tall they are.
Yeah,
so that's the fun stuff. Cool. Okay, so it's the three of us. Use the chat if you want. I prepared a few things around Spin 070 that I wanted to show you guys. So I'll just run through that. It's probably going to take 10-15 minutes or something like that. And then if there's anything particular you guys want to talk about, we can do that. As always, disclaimer, this is going to be recorded. We're going to share this on YouTube. So the purpose of running through these demos is obviously also to have that recording going along. As it's just me here monitoring today, I'll try to keep just unmute if you have a question as we go along. I think that's easier because I'm actually not able to both monitor the chat and do my presentation at the same time. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. And you should be able to see that now. Okay, cool. So let's. Oh, you do see my screen, right? Okay, cool. Let me go over here. The first thing, there's just two things I want to call out from our blog. As I said, just right before, we just announced some about the awards we've been handing out for our Advent Spin 2022. So there's a blog post on our website. We decided to give a few awards for some, sort of going over and beyond or walking the way to Sweet Potato 13 for the solution to our challenges for Advent of Spin that has been given. Baki, who's also on this call, congratulations on the award for being the polyglotter. I think we found your repo where you've actually been solving these challenges in 4 different languages, which is quite impressive. And Anish CR, as well as the Teacher's Assistant Award, and Dennis G as well, just for reaching out and helping us with docs and other things that you found along the way. So teaching back to us about your experience with Spin. So we're very grateful for all your contributions. We hope you guys have had a lot of fun with Advent of Spin. We've seen a lot of great interactions here in Discord and other places, and I think this is something we're definitely going to do again to give you great challenges to sort of get going with Spin. The other block I just wanted to call out, which will sort of lead me into, let me find it down here, some of the presentation, is that a little bit less than a month ago, on December 15th, we announced Spin 0.7. And there's some really awesome features in there that I just want to show a few use cases for and examples with today, to sort of get you an idea of where these things are taking us, and what's in there. I really urge you to go and read the blog article. Let me just get this in the chat so that we have that there. You can dive a little bit deeper into some of those features, but I want to show how some of these work today. And the first one that I want to focus on is how we've enabled using remote components or pre-built components. So today, when you create a Spin application, in your spin.toml, or before 07 released, in your Spin toml, you always had to reference a WASM file for your given Spin component to be locally present on disk. And now with 0.70, we can actually refer to a WASM Spin component on a remote site through a UL. And one of the use cases we use for this ourselves is we have this thing we call the Spin file server. And the Spin file server is just it's a file server. It serves static file content We use that in a lot of our websites, both the developer documentation and Fermyon.com, to serve some of the static content on those sites. But there definitely are many other use cases where you want to use a file server to serve some static type of content. And so the way that we made this an easy experience for you, we can try and just, let's say we want to have an application where we have an API backend and there's some static content we want to serve as a front end. We might want to go ahead and start build let's say we have a Rust API as a backend. And then once we have that, where did I go? I call it static stuff. And once we have that application or the Rust component in here, we have this command we call add, which basically enables you to add a specific template as a new component inside of an existing application. This as well is also a new feature to have the spin add command here. So in this case, I can choose to add the static file server, which is a template. And I'll just show you here how you can go and take a look at these templates I have installed. You can see the list of templates we have is sort of an ever-growing thing right now. We probably want to clean this up a little bit at a given point in time. But two of those things we added here as pre-built VASM components and spin components is this a redirect component and a static file server component. And the reason why we have these two is because basically those are the ones that we use in production today, both for, as I mentioned, in conjunction with Bartholomew, we use them to run our website and our documentation side. So now that I'm in my directory where I have my spin.toml file, I can then go and add that static file server. And let's say this is my static file server. And we're going to serve that off of static. So the static route is the one that the static file server is going to listen to. I'm going to map content from a local directory called assets that is going to be served by the static file server. So some of the things that we build in 070 behind that enables this feature is an improvement to the template system in Spin, so that you can have a template like the static file server template, which can ask for template specific types of information like how should I map, what directory should I map to this given route, which is a thing that the file server needs. So now if we go ahead and look what's actually in the spin toml file, you can see I have the first Rust API component as the first component, and then the file server that I added has first of all a reference to the source being on a URL. So in this case, this is a 0.0.1 WASM file that we have released on GitHub, and obviously there's a digest to ensure integrity of the WASM module that we run. And then the files configuration, which is a required component for this one to run, is then being configured to use assets. And going back to what I talked about, how we improve the template system, you can see that we can actually ask about this directly in the template experience of adding such a component. Okay, so the next brief thing I want to do is I have a PNG file on my machine. And I'm going to copy that into the assets folder. And I don't have the assets folder yet. So let's create that directory, and then we can copy it in there. So if we look, you can see we now have that Fermyon PNG, and I can go ahead and I can build this application. Now I still need to build it because I have the Rust component in here. The file server is already built, but I need to build that one. And let's see what's going on here. This is interesting. You guys know what? I have probably messed things up by using static as a name. Let's see if we can figure this one out. Yes. Let's call this something else. Let's actually call this the API. And what else do I have going on? Let me see if I write that. That should be good. And I probably now have to fix that in the spin. Well, this shouldn't really matter, but let's just do this for now. This is a good one. We should actually, I guess there's a an opportunity to report a bug here. Let's go ahead. Okay, now we build a spin component. Let's go ahead and spin this up, and there you go. And you can see I now have the static file server listening in. So let me head over to a browser really quickly, and we can go to our local host. Should be that one. And you can see the API is responding here on the root. Then if I go ahead and I use static and I ask for the Fermyon PNG, I now have that. Well, this is zoomed in, but I now have that. I now have that static content being served together with my API. So I hope this gives you a good idea of how, having this template experience of, there are plenty of opportunities for everyone to contribute pre-built spin components now that can be reused across various set of applications for different use cases. But with the spin add command, it makes it really, really easy to sort of just pull in something pre-built and add it to your application. I think some of the use cases that we have been discussing is, authorization or something like that is basically being served of a separate part of the URL, but will then just give you that pre-built feature, and you don't have to build that every time you need to build an application. Okay, so that was the first thing I wanted to show. The next thing I want to show is a feature. Let me see, I actually have that up here. Is around configuration provider. So in 0.70, we now have a HashiCorp Vault integration for configuration and secrets in Spin. I actually think this has been a community committed effort. I'm not sure if anyone on the call has been involved in this. But the idea here is that in a Spin application, you can provide configuration either directly in spin.toml, or you can use a runtime configuration provider like environment variables. And then we've added, or HashiCorp Vault has been added as a runtime configuration provider as well to Spin. It's important to mention that these runtime configurations we don't have support for in Fermyon Cloud today. That is obviously of a high priority for us to do that. So what I'm going to show you now is stuff that you can use outside of the Fermyon Cloud, but hopefully in not such a distant future, we'll be able to do similar stuff in the Fermyon Cloud. So to give you an idea of how this works, what I've done here locally, I have just in the window over here, I should have a command up here. I have a HashiCorp Vault server running locally on my machine. And I'm just going to put that at the site right now. And then here's my Spin application that, first of all, uses the config module to go ahead and basically read a specific configuration variable, which is named password, and we're just going to push that out on the server side logs once we read that password from our vault. So how does this all work? Well, there are two things I need to do. First of all, in spin.toml, I need to obviously define the specific configuration. So what you see in line 19 is specifically what the SDK goes and read. And you can see that this is basically substituted by a variable of here, which is required for the application to run. So how do we tie that into our configuration provider or runtime configuration provider? If we were to use an environment variable, we can sort of use the magic path of calling this spin_app_password. And if we have that environment variable in the environment, when we run our Spin application, the content or the value of the variable will be then passed through the configuration system. Now with the HashiCorp Vault, what you need to do as well is you need to add something called, you need to point to a config provider file. And in this case, I have a TOML file called runtime config, and that defines the config provider to be of type vault, the URL to point to my vault, and then there's some token and a specific mount within the vault that I want to look for secrets in. Now, the token and the mount are obviously specific to the vault, how those are defined. And the reason why it's just a clear text root token here is because I run this local development server. So once I have all of this set up, First of all, the thing that I have done, and I just need to, let me just get the all that's over here, is that I have already put the secret into my vault. So the way that the HashiCorp vault works is that I have this path of secret password, which basically means the mount is secret, which you can see up here in the configuration file, and the actual component that or the actual entity that I add in there is the password entity. And you can see it's already here, and I can actually read the value because I have full access to this thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this application. So 2 things that I'm going to do. I'm going to, I actually have this. Let me just add that one. So when I run spin up, I need to add my runtime configuration file. So basically, I'm going to pass in the runtime configuration file, that's TOML file, to the spin up command. And in this case, I'm also following all so that I already have a spin application running, so that we can see the command output here. And then basically, if we then go in curl, you can see that we got a request. I'm just going to bring up the source file, and you can see that basically it's telling us what the password is, which is then being written from the HashiCorp vault. So an end-to-end of how runtime configuration providers enable us to store these secrets safely in an external vault or external resource, and then how using the SDK to very, very easily read these configuration parameters. So for database connectivity, obviously, those type of credentials are very important to have secured in that way. And again, just want to mention, we don't have this feature in Fermyon Cloud yet. We hope to have it soon, but expect a similar, sort of pattern, or at least a similar API that we want to use. How we get the secrets in and how that secret store is being provided in the cloud is sort of still a TBD from our point of view. Okay, so those were the things that I had spent a little time preparing. I wanted to walk through here today. I think some of the other features in 7.0 that are definitely worth looking at or paying attention to is we now have a concept of plugins in Spin, which means that utilities that are needed for a particular set of workloads to run, you can add those. Am I still sharing my screen? I could stop sharing my screen, I think. That was my camera that I shut off. Okay, there you go. So basically, we have a concept of plugins in Spin. So if there's certain utilities you need to run as part of your Spin workflow, you can use that. We have been using it as part of the JavaScript experience, where the JS2 Spin utility that basically compiles the JavaScript into WebAssembly is a Spin plugin. So obviously, the JavaScript SDK is a big one. We have a MySQL API for Rust now. And one thing to note on the various relational database APIs we have, both MySQL and Postgres in this case, is that if you look into some of the WASI work upstream in Bytecode Alliance, there are some proposals now to have a unified API, which is called WASI SQL. I'll see if I can find a reference of that a little bit later. And so we're sort of trying to figure out to what extent we want to keep building database-specific APIs into the Spin SDKs, or something like WASI SQL is the right API to have, or even if there becomes an opportunity for us to adopt existing database drivers by having the possibility to provide TCP connectivity from within Spin applications. So there's sort of a few things in play there, but at least for now, having those APIs for the databases works really, really well. So that at least is a really good starting point. We upgraded Wasm Time, and there's ARM64 Linux support as well now. And I think those are sort of the main things to call out for the 0.7.0 release. That's what I have prepared to talk about. So whatever you guys want to talk about or ask about right now, feel free to just go on mute or use the chat if you have any questions.
Just to mention that the only question that I had for today is about the secrets in the cloud services. However, you already answered that, and I understand that it's going to land soon. So yeah, That was that. Thanks for answering.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I mean, it's an obvious one, right? I think we have sort of three features, and we're also ready to talk about those openly or in the public now. We have three. They sort of call them table stake features, or a bar we had to meet. One of them obviously being the ability to have configuration and secrets in the cloud. Second one would be the ability to attach a custom domain to a spin application, so you can basically able to bring your own domain. And the last one is around persistent data, and whether those would be, I mean, there are lots of ways where you can use some of these serverless database offerings like Upstash and Neon and PlanetScale today. Redis Labs, I think we showcased that in some of our documentation. But having simple access to key value store or the particular database, types of database or data stores is sort of the third very, high priority feature for us in the cloud. So expect those three features to sort of be the next bigger things that we focus on in the cloud. So we sort of have what's needed to really run an application, and it's not just a random API you get and you're able to not have your configuration be baked into your code.
I guess after Mexico, you have the roadmap. I don't know about it could be public or not, but someone mentioned that there will be like a roadmap that can be seen, at least for the cloud offering.
I actually don't recall whether we have talked about publish this, like document this publicly, but I mean, it's going to be as as publicly known as it will be, given this recording we're doing here. But those are really the three main features of the cloud today that we're working on. On the spin side, and you should, if you want to look, monitor for the bigger things that are happening in spin, you should take a look at what's being written as the spin improvement proposals. Let me just find a link to where they are in the repo.
Yeah, I checked those with the OCI stuff.
Yes, specifically OCI. I know we have a working proof of concept for that right now. That is one of them, and there will probably other of these improvement proposals that will show up in there in Spin. But I think between what's in the improvement proposals and the issue list in the Spin repo, that those are amazing. I don't know if the team have started actually tagging issues and tie them to milestones, but I think it's a reasonable ask when they make prioritizations to have that. So yeah. Are there any particular features you guys are looking for that I haven't touched on, or stuff that is sort of like, if you get that, I can get to the next stage?
I don't know. There is a lot of them, I guess. If you want to fill your own stuff and you know like a CDN or caching stuff, like and not necessarily needing like a multi-cloud or whatever multi-region stuff, but at least some edge stuff to be deployed. I don't know. You choose whether you want I don't know, Europe South and Europe Central, for example.
Yeah.
And things like that.
And is that because of redundancy or because of latency to the users?
Users mainly.
Okay, so user latency.
And for example, we have an idea to do plugins, like a customer-specific code, not written by us, but like extensions on an API or whatever. And then now the plan is to build that with Cloud Functions or Lambdas or whatever. It's a little bit scary to do. So Wasm might be a good solution for that. I don't know where I think you mentioned in your documentation that extended Javi thing by the company that does these things. I don't know the name now.
Oh, Shopify?
Not Shopify. orbital, suborbital, something like that. I
Yeah,
think. Something like that. It's like a use case for Wasm. I don't know. So whoever is the customer can write their own in their own language just to supply it somehow. But that should be like on the edge, not
yeah.
necessarily.
Okay. And is
I
that
don't
because
know.
you need to carry those plugins to where the user specifically is, or do they just need to run? Like, does the user is it a we somehow had these use cases that people talk about where they, because of the size of a WASM module, they actually want to, get it onto the specific the specific device where the user want to run it, or is it just because of the latency of the networking request to the compute?
Just the latency, and
Okay.
as close as possible, it's fine, because some of our customers are, let's say, Netherlands only or Germany only, and things like that.
Yeah. There is a. I'll see if I can find it.
Because other option is to run something like Vercel functions or Cloudflare functions or whatever. That's an option, I guess.
Yeah. There was someone just recently released a framework for plugins, a WASM-based framework. I don't know if anyone on the call recalls the name of it. Let's see if I can find it. I know we have some people in our Discord channel that are part of that. I'm just going to find the name right now, and then I'll post it back here. Yeah, weren't able to find that in the. Let's see, there's a guy called. Where is he? There. Extism is the name of the thingy. Let me just find it. That one. I just posted a link in the chat. I haven't spent time with it or looked into it in further details, but it's something that is a WebAssembly powered universal plugin system, is what it's been called out as.
Yeah, I will check it out.
Yeah, cool. See the few more people who joined here a little bit later. I spent the first 20 minutes or so going through some of the stuff we released in Spin 07 about a month ago. There will be a recording of this we'll put on YouTube, so you can go back and sort of get the recorded version of that if you're interested in seeing that. But thanks for joining, and this is just an open discussion forum, so feel free to come off mute if you have a question, or just use the chat. I'll do my best to answer any question that comes up.
Maybe not spin question or like mentioning the OCI stuff. You're running now on that installer thing, the HashiCorp Nomad jobs or whatever you're running them, and
Yeah.
do you know a use case where you can bundle it up Wasm time and run it in containers in Kubernetes or on a virtual machine or something like that? Not necessarily like a spin, run Wasm, but in Wasm time, but
Yeah,
build
you
your
can.
own container stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, the Docker has a technical preview out where they use Wasm Edge as the runtime, which basically means you can have Docker run WebAssembly modules and containers side by side. I think for me, an awesome use case that I've seen is how you can have a development environment where a Docker Compose file basically runs your databases or what other services in containers, and then you have your API code or whatever code you have in WebAssembly modules, all described in a Docker Compose file and being able to run that locally. The equivalent. Oh, sorry.
Does that Rust kubelet Crustlet or whatever it's called before? Does that work? Can that be tried out?
The colleagues I have, the teammates that I have who've been involved in Crustlet, probably that's not the way to go. Microsoft has done some work around Run WASI and have in their Azure Kubernetes service actually support this today, where you can run both. They have an application framework called Spider Lightning or Slide. I think they also refer to that. But it can actually also run spin applications. So if you have a spin application today, you can run that in a Kubernetes cluster in Azure in sort of a managed experience. But using Run WASI and the container dshim, you're also able to. I actually haven't seen anyone set this up themselves, but you're able to create a Kubernetes cluster that would support spin applications and Spider Lightning applications as a different workload type than your container.
But those are containers like 24/7, right? They're always running. Is there something like Knative, like functions that can be done?
I mean, no, I don't think so. I think, no, not that I'm aware of. Then you would have to sort of construct it yourself within the, what you have available within Kubernetes. Meaning the auto scaling and those type of things. Which is why I'm actually not 100% sure how they do that in AKS, to be honest. I can't answer to that specifically, but I know the experience in AKS today is that you have to have a certain set of. So AKS has a concept of node pools. So basically, the data plane or the workers in that Kubernetes cluster need to be designed specifically for WASI. So you have a certain set of servers that you need to stand up that enable being able to run these applications. And I would be my best. I haven't played. My understanding of this is that you sort of have the ways of Kubernetes to do, pod autoscaling. I believe these are still pods, right? So you would have to use whatever Kubernetes can do in terms of horizontal pod autoscaling and what things like what's it called? There's a framework called Kida and something else where you basically scale these pods down to zero, or you can scale the deployments down to zero. So those are sort of the mechanisms you would have to work with to create something that mimics what we do in the cloud, where the instances are only being loaded and run when there are incoming requests.
Okay. And does somebody runs like WebAssembly on Lambda, like a run?
I've seen someone build a POC running spin applications in Lambda. It all becomes a little bit, like these babushka dolls, the Russian dolls, where you open, there's another doll, there's another doll, there's another doll. To me, it becomes a little bit of a, bunch of weird directions you have all the way down. But yeah, you can do it to get to something where I guess what's important for someone like you is to have a billing model eventually, right? Where you pay only for when you use it. It's probably not particularly efficient in the end, but it's what you can do today.
Yeah, in my use case, I don't know. Now it's like 20 plus 30 microservices. Even if they're deployed on whatever cloud, they don't do anything by themselves. You need a gateway of sorts or whatever to connect them.
Yeah.
And to actually talk in one setup, because it's GraphQL in the end. It's one super graph. So yeah. It's interesting thing. So Lambda now only wants a zip file or whatever. So it can be layers like Docker or what, something like that. But as you said,
I don't know. I don't have a ton of experience with Lambda. I should actually look more into it because I hear from more and more people that the considerations that they have when they start looking into Spin is really Lambda use cases, or a lot of what people are doing in Lambda today. So at least I think I need to go and educate myself a little bit more on Lambdas. I see if I can find that. There was I think it was an AWS developer advocate or someone that actually made something with Spin running in Lambda. But it's a while back, so yeah. I missed it, but why was Xtism linked? I linked it because we had a conversation about plugins and using WebAssemblies as plugins. Oh, sorry. I see, Raymond, you already answered the question.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just curious because I know the rate of change is so high, and with WebAssembly, there's a lot of opportunity for various kind of teams to kind of overlap, and it's good, but it's getting at the point where it's hard to keep clear boundaries between things.
Yeah. Somebody probably wrote a book about how an ecosystem like this evolves over time, and then things. It seems to be at the point where things are exploding a little bit. Where a bunch of stuff just shows up and in all various directions, and it's hard to figure out how to really distinguish and categorize these things. But no, I think you're right. Organic growth, good problems. It means there's a lot of people looking into space, which eventually means a lot of improvements in even the foundational stuff, and lots of ideas being tried out. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can.
Hopefully, we don't bring the bad stuff from the past, or only the good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how it starts, right? Like, so your use case with the Lambda example, right? If someone was working at Amazon, they're trying to take this new technology and see how it integrates with where they're at currently. The greenfield approach is like free and wide open. You have a lot of options. But in terms of getting inside something that's already existing, like a Kubernetes cluster, yes, there's ways there, but the uphill battle is much harder.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully someone will come up with some orchestrator v2 more edge friendly and things like that. So it doesn't have to be containers or whatever. They're going to be code.
I mean, to a lot of the use cases we talk about as future opportunities is basically, you mentioned earlier, how can you get the WASM module or the Spin application that you run in the Fermyon cloud today, how can you get that closer to your users? But because of the way that these WebAssembly modules work, there are ideas around how things can be. I often hear sometimes people ask these questions like, why don't we just send the module with the requests, right? So the actual way of computing the data move to the data rather having the data be the thing that we transport over the network, and then have compute being sort of in a particular space, right? And I think those are some of the opportunities that in this ecosystem people are thinking about how to solve.
You mean like put a cache and store it in the browser until you...
Yeah, or even send it as a payload of a request.
Yeah.
Like the same way that we distribute JavaScript files today, right? For in-browser and those type of front end things. Yeah, and the SQLite in the browser is also very interesting. There's so much stuff happening. Yeah, thanks for popping by. If there are no more topics you guys want to discuss or have any questions, I think we can just, send this now and we can go back to the things we do. And go back to the rest of the team here and see if they're being productive or they are too much enjoying the Mexican weather. That's where we are right now. I hope they're productive. That was what we agreed upon when I went into my hotel room to do this call with you guys. But yeah, thanks everyone for showing up, and we're gonna have a new meeting in a month from now. Look out in the Discord channel, we'll announce them there. And always feel free to reach out on Discord, engage in GitHub. We really appreciate the time and effort you guys put into being part of this community. And thanks for all the feedback. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
Mexico.